Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to the regular series, the series we only ever do on this channel, Shouting into the
Yeah.
Void.
We can't say
don't do-
regular at this point.
we don't do any other videos. I don't know what you're on about. It's not been like 5 weeks between this. I don't think. I think
It has been. It's
three
been
or,
ages,
3 or
isn't it?
4, hasn't it? It
Yeah.
feels like it's been a long time since we've re-reviewed an episode of Doctor Who, which is what we do in this video series. As it has been a while, I'll remind everyone we're in series 6 now. We've been in series 6 for what feels like a year, but this is only episode 5 of series 6. So we have the TARDIS team of the Doctor, me and Rory, Matt Smith, Karen Gillan, and Arthur Darvill. They're having fun, I guess. They're definitely having fun at the start of this episode. When we introduce them, they're very cash, very
Playing darts,
pretty good, pretty fun.
scanning for
Treating the TARDIS,
pregnancies, vibing.
yeah, standard. This is the Rebel Flesh, which is the first episode of a two-parter. Right before the mid-series finale. This is the penultimate story before that. This sees our TARDIS team land on a planet. I don't think it's Earth. I think it's just a generic planet, isn't it?
I think it's supposed to be Earth. Just like
is it?
Far future, yeah. It's like 2100 or something.
Well, there you
I
go.
think. I could be
They
wrong.
land on the planet in a castle where these people are mining acid.
Yes.
And there are basically, to protect them from the acid, they create doppelgangers of themselves, which is they use this weird gooey flesh substance to create versions of themselves to do the dangerous work, because in their eyes they're just like machines. They're soulless, they're not important. As this is Doctor Who, I'm sure you can guess what happens. The creatures, the doppelgangers, they not become sentient, but they become independent from their human counterparts, and they basically just want to live. They just want to survive, and they do so with terrible CGI and some gross faces. And yeah, I mean, it's part 1, so there's no resolution yet. At the minute, we end with a doppelganger of the Doctor. Whoa! How did that happen? And they just have to figure shit out. All at the same time, a solar flare thing is happening, which is making things explode. So there's some added tension for you.
Yes.
Which was definitely needed.
It was only there to separate the gangers from the humans, wasn't it?
So. Well, yeah.
It's played its part. I mean, I wasn't really anticipating this one. I do think it's unfortunate, reviewing it as like a rewatch and knowing what's coming, being like, oh, just get to a good man goes to war. So that is always going to act against it when you're like re-watching it, I guess. Particularly when this is like part 1 of the 2-part story already. But yeah, it's fine. One thing I will say for it went really quick for me. Which surprised me.
Fair. Yeah.
Because I was like, okay, we're about halfway through, I think. I paused it, there was 7 minutes left. I was like, oh, pleasantly surprised.
So you're halfway through the story, but not the episode.
Yeah, yes. So I was like, well, that's good. So I guess I wasn't necessarily bored, but I wouldn't go as far as to say I was particularly interested.
Yeah.
I would say I really, really like the idea. I think you messaged me about this. Like, it's a really great idea, and then the execution.
Yeah.
I think maybe it's the wrong setting for it. It's certainly the wrong set of characters for it, I think, is what really lets it down. I think the writing for the characters just isn't good enough for us to care about these ganger versions of them as much as I think the story wants it to. And I think the writing actively shoots itself in the foot and goes against and acts against like the message it's trying to get across, which isn't great. Maybe part 2 will rectify some of that. Certainly helps that there'll be 2 Matt Smiths, at least. That's something it's got going for it over this one, I suppose. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's my favorite. Certainly the weakest of series 6 thus far, I would say.
Yes.
I mean, I thought Curse of the Black Spot was good. It was okay, fine. And this was like fine in a way that I would be fine never having to look at it or watch it ever again. It's there. I appreciate where it needs to be here in terms of where they go with Amy and all of that plot. I struggle to care about the supporting cast. I think that's what kind of doesn't quite grab me. It's fine. It wasn't as bad and as boring as I feared it was going to be, but I wouldn't say it even exceeded any expectations I had for it. It just kind of it exists, and I think it could have been so much more.
Yeah, I think my main takeaway is that there's so much like interesting and potential here, and you can have a good like moral dilemma here, but I don't think the episode it doesn't want to do that. It's almost as if this moral dilemma is just being forced on the story, even though that's what the story should be. It's a very strange situation. There's just so many little bits that do work, but overall it doesn't work. There are some, I think knowing some aspects of the overall series arc, I think does help this episode, which we'll come on to a little bit. But overall, I think it's just a bit, not a slog to get through, because I think watching it, I think it's one of those episodes where I think people just don't watch it enough because people have the feeling that it's bad and there's nothing good in there at all.
People think like you've gotten all you need to get from it because of like the gang rating reveal, so you can just I know that reveal, so I can just skip to this next one.
But I think there is something in here for having a fun time, not necessarily it being good, but I think you could watch this and be like, this is absolutely ridiculous, this is terrible, but I'm having fun in certain situations. If you're just watching it on a casual Thursday afternoon, then you're probably not going to do it. But if you're having friends around and you're getting drinks, you're like, hey,
I would love to get drunk to this one.
So I think that it has that going for it, which we'll discuss more a little bit later on. But overall, I think as a standard episode, it's definitely not the best. It's definitely the weakest of Series 6, and it could be the weakest of Matt Smith's so far, I guess, with Series 5 as well.
I would agree. So far, this is the weakest.
So far, that's there is Journey.
We're coming for you, Christmas.
Oh no, I forgot about Christmas. Oh god.
And then I know, to be fair, I don't know. I have a lot more hope for that one than I think I had for this one.
Yes, I definitely. But
especially because we're coming up to Christmas, I'm feeling nostalgic for it. I guess.
Although I don't think we're going to get to the Christmas.
Oh no, we won't.
Unfortunately, but it'll be Easter by the time we get to that one. But yes, normally on this show we have 3 positives and 3 negatives to go through, 3 main ones. Occasionally we stray from that number. I do have more than 3 positives, but I do have a lot more than 3 negatives, unfortunately.
Interesting.
So it'll play into sort of how I was saying you can have kind of fun with it. But anyway, I know you went first last week because it was your favorite episode, so I will go first this time.
Last episode, nearly a month ago.
Yeah, basically. I think my first positive is the concept of the flesh. I think it's a very unique idea. It's a cool idea, and it makes sense. And if you think about the way capitalism, consumerism goes, and automation and all that kind of thing, of course this kind of thing would exist in the future, where you can just have this. It's effectively Avatar. You can have this avatar of yourself and you can just control it and it's fine.
Isn't it bizarre to think this came out 2 years after Avatar?
I know.
Now like Avatar was 13 years ago and the sequel's only just coming out in next week.
Oh, well, that's it. Horrible. Sequel to The Rebel Flesh coming out in 2 years' time.
I'm good, thanks. Keep it.
But I think it's a unique idea, at least for Doctor Who, and it's something that it does throw up these questions, and I'll come on to that again later. It does throw up the sort of the morality about working with these things. Are they human? Are they real? Do they have any rights? All that kind of thing. And again, there's so many like metaphors you can put onto that, which unfortunately this episode doesn't do. But the idea is that you could put so many different challenges in the world into that sort of dilemma, and so that's why I think it's a great concept. It's not necessarily used the best way, and I think there's some aspects of it, perhaps the CGI element of things, don't do too well.
At least it would probably look better if they did a sequel in 2 years time.
That's true, it definitely would. But I think definitely the whole concept of the flesh and how they used, and this kind of almost dystopian type of automation, I think, is a very unique thing. And I'm
Mm.
hopeful that maybe in the second part they'll dive deeper into what it means. They kind of touch on the surface, with the guy that has the kid and he wants to get home for his birthday, and they kind of throw in that, who's going to go home? And spoiler alert, ultimately it doesn't matter because one of them dies. But there's the whole thing of, there's that dilemma there, which I quite like.
I do appreciate as well, like its placement here in terms of like speculation about the Doctor's death, and especially when there's another Doctor at the end of this episode, like, oh, maybe that's how they get out of it. Maybe that's the one who dies. So, I appreciate what they're going for. I just, did it need to be 2 episodes of this? Probably not. But...
Yes. So yeah, my first positive is just the flesh. What is your first one? Is that up there for you as well?
I did put like the general idea itself as like one of my bonus ones, because I do think it's really, really cool idea. Also, I think the Rebel Flesh is a great title. I love the title of both these episodes, but sadly the story itself lets it down, which makes me really angry when they waste a good title. Looking at you, Jenny, to the centre of the card.
Looking at you, loving monsters.
But yeah, looking at you, Fear Her, by the same writer of this 2-parter. I'm sorry. To be fair, I am going to criticize the writing in this. Sorry, Matthew Graham. I'm sure you're a lovely man. But Fear Her wasn't his fault because he had like a week to write that because Stephen Fry pulled out. So you good stuff. This great Life on Mars and Ashes to Ashes. You're doing good.
That's why what's his
name's in it. Yeah,
Buzzer. But whatever his name is,
it's all connected. But anyway, that's for a bit later on, I guess. My first positive is the direction. Which I thought was very strong in this episode. I always remembered from this one that shot when Rory's hiding from Gang of Jennifer, and you see her through that little square, and I'm like, that's really creepy. So I really like that sequence. I think there's another shot as well. I should have written down all of them. That I was like, oh, that's really cool. I think Rory and Jennifer are like walking in a corridor, and then they leave, and you see Cleves is in the shadow, like watching them. I thought that was really creepy as well. So I think the effectiveness of that, and when the storm hits, I think that whole sequence, is quite interesting to watch. And seeing like the acid drip onto the floor. So there's some really cool visuals in that. And I do like the introduction shot of like the flesh tank itself. I remember when I first watched this with my family, they all like looked up to like try and look in. Like, it's a fucking TV show. Why are you looking up trying to look into that giant bowl, you fools? So that's my big memory of watching that one live. So I think the direction's really good by Julian Simpson, who sadly, this is the only story he directed in Doctor Who thus far. Bring it back, Russell. But yeah, I just thought, say what you will about how the story's used and the concept and everything. I think at least visually, with the limited setting, the limited characters, I think there is some interesting direction in there for the most part. And fun fact about Julian Simpson, do you remember in Dalek, the woman who stays behind to like shoot at it when Adam and Rose run away? He's married to her in real life. So there you go. It all comes back to Doctor Who.
Not Simmons. Simmons is the...
She's like Simmons the American woman.
Simmons is
the
secretary, isn't she? Yeah.
But her.
Oh, interesting.
So I thought that was fun. I only found that out like 2 minutes before I went on this call because I looked up what his name was. But yeah, I think that's fun. But yeah, I thought, there were some cool visuals and, I imagine it's quite difficult to make this episode work and look half decent when you're like, oh, there needs to be 2 of the same person in this scene, and trying to plan that out and orchestrate, body doubles or when to like CGI people in. I imagine that was a lot of hard work, especially when it's like your first story in Doctor Who and everything. So I think Julian did a very good job in directing this one. So I thought I'd shout him out.
Yep, I think that's fair. I think part of that direction is also when they're teasing Matt Smith's doppelganger. With the mouth in the goo and then the hand on the tiles. I think that's really cool and really well done. And the TARDIS slowly sinking into the acid as well, I think is sort of well done.
Yeah, that was nice.
For what it is. But yeah, so I guess, at least it looks good at times. I guess that's something.
Yeah, at times.
At times.
It's not his fault when it doesn't look very good, is I guess what I'm getting at.
Yes, yeah. No, that's fair. My second positive is, again, the whole morality question, the whole dilemma around, are these real people? Do they have rights? Are they any less of someone just because they were made in a tank? It can also be tied into the whole, if cloning was a thing, what are the legalities around that? Is that still technically a person? If a baby is grown in a lab, is it still a normal human? That kind of thing. And maybe it's more, I like the idea of the morality of it, because again, they don't necessarily address it much in this episode. But I do like that whole concept and the whole idea that these people were just treating them as normal, work vehicles effectively, because even she calls them, it's effectively like a forklift. They've treated that, and now they have to face, oh, hang on a minute, I don't even know if I'm real, I might be a ganger, I don't know. So I'm hoping that gets a little bit explored a little bit more next week. We will see. I think it does slightly, but maybe not to the extent that I'm hoping it does. But I do like it. I do like the morality of all of this question, of all of this story. But again, there's going to be asterisks to most of these, I feel. But
yeah,
never mind.
Okay.
Your second positive?
My second positive is the ganger makeup. And I'm talking when it is physically makeup rather than anything else. Sadly. But I really like the design of it. I think they're really creepy. Practical effects is always going to be the best way of doing it. I think particularly with these guys, you don't need the giraffe wavy head thing in the bathroom or punching Rory in the face.
No.
Or me, and she goes up. I don't know. Oh, Jennifer. But yeah, I've always found them really creepy. I think in particular, I think you messaged me about it as well. Matt Smith looks really creepy in that kind of makeup, and I love
terrifying.
It. She's like, oh, maybe he's gonna be like a villain, or maybe he's not.
Spoiler alert, he's not.
Spoiler alert, he's not. So yeah, I thought that was really well done. I love how it's realized, and there's some fun facts I've got later about the concept and the creation of how they looked and everything. Kind of looked like an eyeball almost. So yeah, I really like those sequences. Sadly, they're quite sparingly used, but money. But when we do get them, I think it is effectively used, and I guess that also comes down to the direction from Julian again. So yeah, I think they look great, whether they're kind of cast in shadow a bit and they're really creepy, or even out in the light. I think there's some really good usage of those effects. And I guess you can't really use too much of them, because the idea is these gangers are also humans, and they're kind of trying to balance out a bit. So it makes sense that we don't see too much of it, because they're fighting for their rights and fighting for the right to live. Of course, they're going to try and make themselves look human again.
Their right to party.
Fight for their right to party. Exactly that. Are we human, or are we dancers, or are we gangers? But yeah, I think practically those are really, really impressive looking things. I remember when the trailer for these episodes first came out and stuff. I was like, oh, they're kind of the creepy thing of the episode. Every trailer kind of has that like, oh shit, that's scary. The very first trailer for Series 6, it was the dolls. I was like, oh shit, not looking forward to that one. And yeah, this is kind of that one for me. Kind of very creepy idea, and I like that they can be creepy and scary, but not necessarily the monsters, which I think was also the intention behind them. So yeah, I thought that was very cleverly done and really well realized.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think there's one bit as well where Jennifer's looking at her face, and it's all like not quite completely fleshy. It's got all the red lines and all that stuff on it. I like that design. I think they should have used that one a bit more compared to when they go maybe too over the top with the CGI. But we'll come on to that. But yeah, I do like, again, I think it comes back to the concept. I like the idea of the design, but sometimes I don't think it's realized very well. Again, we'll discuss that later. My final major positive is the Doctor working it all out, working out who's a ganger and who's what. Specifically when he figures out Cleves is the ganger, and he makes it like a comment about, oh yeah, you're still, it's still settling or something, and no one picks it up.
The nerve endings, and
then he goes with the plate and passes it to her, and she just holds it, and I'm like, that's very clever. I like that. I like seeing that, where as soon as you realize that, you're like, and then when you rewatch it, you're like, oh yeah, I can see what he's doing, I can see him working it out. And I really like that. And then obviously that plays into the whole, he's working out what's wrong with Amy, he's trying to work out that whole thing, and this all plays into that. He's learning what the gangers are like, he learns how they evolve, how they sort of come together, and how long they can sort of hold the form for. And I really like that aspect of things. And I think it is good to see the Doctor work it out in a way that the audience would also can then see it. rather than him just knowing it straight off. I quite like that. It's quite a nice change of pace for him being sort of loud and I don't know, I need to work it out loudly and kind of do all that.
That's another good thing about the concept, I think, is that it's very cut and dry. Like, this is what the situation is, so the audience can just follow it along quite simply and try and work it out for themselves. So that's another reason why the idea is, I think, very good.
Yeah, definitely. So that is a bonus for me. Your third slash final positive?
Third slash final-ish, yes. The cliffhanger ending. Always a sign of a great content-filled episode, and I love the cliffhanger so much. Although I also had the cliffhanger for Army of Ghosts, and that episode's just good anyway.
That's true.
But yeah, I don't remember even seeing it coming, even though it's clearly signposted what's going on with the mouth and the hand and stuff. So I think he sounds just different enough when he's like, "Trust me," because he's still, I guess, forming the vocal cords and stuff. That maybe you're not going to necessarily say it right from the off, like, "Oh, it's the Doctor." But yeah, just that reveal shot right at the end, I think it's great. There's just something so scary, I think, and bizarre about seeing the Doctor and like the image of the Doctor just look off, like when David Tennant's possessed in 42, and like, oh shit. And here, it's like, oh, he's dressed as the Doctor and everything, but he's all fleshy and skinny. Ugh, what's going on? So yeah, I really like that ending because you have the basic concept of the gangers. Okay, this is the morality thing they're doing with it. We're trying to guess who's who. Okay, Buzzer, the gang has died twice, poor Buzzer. And now, this war's coming. We kind of know, okay, so that's what's going to happen in part 2. Okay, fine. There's going to be this war. How are we going to resolve this, etc., etc.? And then that happens, and now there's another Doctor in play. Like, oh, that's a whole other layer. How are we going to respond to that now? Amy, who had been very much like on the side, like they're not people, they're gangers, and Roy was on the other side of that event. How is she going to respond to the fact that there's another Doctor now? And obviously that is a big part of what they explore with part 2. And yeah, it changes the game in a good way, in a positive way, and like, oh shit, something's, you think where the story's going, and now there's something additional on top of that, and there's another twist to come in the end of the next one as well. So very much kind of esque of the Daleks showing up at the end of Army of Ghosts. Like, you think where the story's going. Oh shit. I think it's a new kind of layer and twist to the tale. And a new interesting side to the Doctor to explore as well, which I always like when they can do. So yeah, it's a really great ending as well, and surprisingly can get you quite hyped, I think, to watch the next one, even if the episode before may not have been your favorite. So I guess it was successful in that case.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, and I agree. I agree with you.
Thank you.
Fine. You're welcome. My additional positive is just thanks to knowing the context of the series as a whole. It's kind of knowing like, the Doctor's actually doing this is the reason why they came here. He's doing this. He's, especially at the start where he tries to ditch Jamie and Rory. Like, at the time you're thinking like, oh, it's just your casual Doctor being like, yeah, see you later. I'll be back soon. Like,
brace yourselves for crash positions. That just lands fine. No.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
How about that?
So, so I do, I do like that. And I like that after you know what's coming, you could see that in this episode, and maybe you'll see a bit more in next week. I don't know. Especially when he's like, tells us to breathe and all that kind of thing. And if it wasn't obvious, they'd have to do the little, oh, the lady's here, by the way. And then, I don't think you necessarily needed that, because I think it's enough. But that's for people of the time watching it and being like, hey, remember, things are happening.
Because there wasn't any of it in the Doctor's Wife, so I guess they didn't want more than one episode gap with that, I guess. So
yes, yeah.
Bring her back. And because the reveal's the next part of what's going on, I guess they need to remember this because it's important for the next one.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I think the context of the series does help a little bit with sort of seeing the depth to the episode, to surface the episode.
Yeah.
But that's it. Did you have any additional positives?
I thought the look of the solar tsunami was quite cool. I like that whole kind of sequence when it's properly hitting and the Doctor's climbing up the tower and everything. I just think design-wise, it's an interesting looking thing. And I think the episode's so dull and grey in its setting and everything like that.
Wet,
and it's moral, disgusting. I think it was a good idea to kind of have things like that just to bring a bit of colour into it. So yeah, I thought that was kind of an interesting thing, that it kind of started off looking quite bleak. Then there's this huge kind of splash of colour, which actually kind of causes the issue of the episode. And as soon as that's gone, it's all bleak again. It's like history is just horrible. The future's horrible. Everything's horrible. So yeah, I liked the look of that sequence as well. I know it's very much like we needed something to separate the gangers and everything. So
yeah,
solar tsunami. There you go. But I actually do think it looked quite cool, and you know, an excuse for the Doctor's shoes to get destroyed, so that you know we can settle that up as well.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, no others.
No.
Right. Negatives.
The main trio were good, even though Amy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's. Yeah. I would agree that. I think Matt Smith's great in this one. Well, as he always is. Maybe not Rory. I still have. We'll come on to my issues around Rory, and I think maybe Amy is a little bit too left behind.
I can kind of get like her not having a huge role in this, because I guess the Doctor would want to keep her at a distance from all this anyway, because he doesn't know how her flesh body would react to anything going on.
No, agreed.
I guess that makes sense, but yeah.
Yes. So negatives. My first one, and to be fair, it got better throughout the episode, but Cleves and the actor that played her, I think in the first half especially, not a very good performance.
I will also note, as a prelude to this, she was cast 3 days before filming started, because the actress who was supposed to play her pulled out, so she didn't have much prep time. I think that probably does inform it a bit, but also like
definitely. Yeah. Okay, I think that's kind of fair. Because I think some of the lines, it did feel like you could have taken another go at that. You know.
But the character herself is also just like, oh, you're going to be that character in this story.
Yes. Yeah. So, I think there was the issue of she was a generic antagonist of, I'm the boss here. We're gonna keep working, even though everything's dangerous. We're gonna keep. And I'm like, if you just use your common sense and go, right, look, it's too dangerous to keep working. Let's stop. None of this would happen. But she's got to be the generic, whatever. And then the Ganger version, when we see later on, is just so almost different. When they're supposed to be the same, it's so like strange. Like, oh, classic me. Oh, maybe we shouldn't go to war. Where the other was like, yeah, it's killing me.
Exactly. Yeah, that's kind of my point that I'm getting to as well. Like that's it, going against the concept of like we're the same person, we're the same personality. And she's like, that's typically me. And then the very next scene, she's completely different in how she's acting. And like you're commenting on her being like, yeah, typically me, and then you're not acting like that. Doesn't make sense for what the episode's trying to say.
Yeah, so I'm not a big fan. I just think that a slightly wooden performance at the start. I think it gets into it sort of. It's better when there's two of them there. I think it's a better performance.
Her first scene,
when she runs away. I think other than that,
I think I did notice in like her first scene, like she said every single line exactly the same way.
Yes,
like, the same intonation, everything. Like, okay, we get it. You're a sarcastic bitch, but like,
and that's where it came in. I was like, this is not good. Okay. But again, maybe that's she only read the script the day before, so
yeah, she had that night next to prep time. So
but yeah, at the same time, it's not the best antagonist. I know they just need an antagonist to get them to the bit where they can have an actual conflict. But
yeah, they need someone to make them like, no, we're staying and doing this. This is our job. We don't want to stay another cycle.
But someone at that level for a boss wouldn't, that's the kind of thing you would see as like, think of the guy that runs the U operations thing.
Yeah, Halpin. Yeah.
That's more him. If that was the same character there, and she was like a suit that was not getting in on the work, not doing all that, not maybe I'd get it a bit more. Like, you have to keep working. I'm the head honcho kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like. I don't know if like, it ties into the next one, because I think the next one like reveals she's ill or something, isn't it? She's got something.
I don't know.
I think
maybe.
she's got like an aneurysm. Or so I'm pretty sure there's something like that they do in the next one. So maybe that's why her personality is a bit all over the place, or why she's quite rash.
Maybe she needs to.
But I think they needed
early.
a bit more setup in this one to like maybe hint at that. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe they just needed something that was like her speaking to someone, like, I've got to get home because I've got blah blah, something like that. I can't stay any longer. I don't know. But yeah, the minute generic antagonist that isn't very interesting. I don't think she's got the most depth out of all the other side characters either. We don't know anything about her background, at least with the other guy. We know he's got a kid. That's it for the depth of the other characters, mind you.
There's that Dickon guy who just stands there.
Oh, he's just there.
That would be a drinking game if ever we watched this for like a drunk thing. Is like take a shot every time he's in a scene and does absolutely nothing, because we would be wasted.
Oh, could you imagine? But yeah, unfortunately, Cleves is my first negative, just because I think it's just not well done.
Yes.
What is your first negative?
Yeah, well, it does kind of tie into my. I've just put. I think the side characters just aren't very well realized. I guess more so in the writing. I just don't think the dialogue for them isn't. I don't think particularly like organic and stuff. And normally cardboard cutout characters, I guess, are fine. Especially in stories like this, and it's a claustrophobic thing. Any of them could die any second. But when the concept is like we need to care about the ganger versions of these characters, the fact that the main characters themselves are just boring anyway, I don't know if we really, they don't resonate as strongly. If like they did this story with like the cast of Under the Lake Before the Flood or Voyage of the Damned, those are good, likable side characters, apart from the ones we're supposed to hate. I'd find myself like I would care about those versions. I just don't think, I don't know, maybe a change of setting, or they were just doing something a bit different with it.
Maybe there's like I said, they don't necessarily need all of them there. They could maybe chop one or two.
Yeah, because they, as fun fact to reveal, there's supposed to be even more characters than this, and they cut them out. So I think you could have at least gotten rid of Dickon, because what does he do? He's there to just die in the next one, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, I think just, and even when they tried to flesh them out, I don't think it really works. There's that scene with Cleves in her own when she's doing like her villain monologue to her locker, and like I talk to myself all the time, like that's believable and stuff. When she's like, "Oh, the doctor thinks we're gonna do this, and I'll show them. I'm like, no, people don't act like that. And like, okay, fine, whatever. And then when Jennifer's trying to prove to Rory, like, oh, these are my memories, and I remember like the smell of the grass on the field. I remember the color of the petals.
I remember my poor V in those boots.
And I remember another girl, and she's confident. I just like, people don't. That's not how people remember things. I mean, that's certainly not in my experience. And when I've heard other people tell stories, I'm like, it's very much like, okay, this has been a speech that's been written, because it's a TV show going into specific details about this memory. And like, I just don't think that's quite how we remember things. I know there was an aspect of Jennifer's character that was cut, I think. She had perfect recall memory. So that would make sense if they'd actually kept that in, but she doesn't. So I'm like, this sounds a bit weird, because that's like how her ganger is kind of a bit more believable than the other ones, and gets away with a bit more, and like gets past some memory lock thing in the next episode, I think. But I think they didn't even mention that in the episode in the end. So there's just things like that, and I'm like, it just doesn't feel natural. So I'm not connecting to it, because I'm like, that's not how people speak. And then, like you were saying, Cleves is like, oh, that's so typically me. We have to take charge, don't we, Miranda? And then the very next scene, Jennifer Ganger's the one taking charge and not that ganger. And she's like, do we have to do? I'm like, that's not what your character is. Like, make up your mind. So yeah, I think the way some of those characters are written, A, kind of boring, and B, I think it actively goes against what the episode wants you as an audience to kind of go on board with. So not ideal.
Yeah, I think that's fair. My next negative is the Rory and Jennifer relationship.
That is my third negative.
First of all, I don't get why Rory is so like adamant he has to protect and help Jennifer and that kind of thing, especially after the ganger like tries to kill him, knocks him out,
like punches him, and he even mentions that, and then she doesn't even apologize or anything for it, and he's still like fully on her side.
And then I just don't get it. Maybe it's because we've had so much of Amy being terrible to Rory, and they're like, oh, maybe we should throw something the other way.
That's the only thing I like about it, is like Amy getting a bit jealous. I'm like that's kind of balanced, and it shows like her care and concern for that relationship. Definitely. But you can do that and then not also have the bits where it's just the two of them, and she's like kissing him on the cheek and stuff. We don't need that, because it's always going to be Amy for Rory, and like we just.
It makes me feel gross. I watch it, and it's like watching your best friend cheat on his girlfriend. It's like, can you stop this, please? I'm not a fan of this. Please.
It's just very bizarre.
And you wish you could just sort of shake him and be like, I don't know whether you've got a crush or anything, or what I know what's going on. But
I don't know if he kind of sees like how he kind of used to be in her, so he feels a bit sorry for her, and he's I don't know.
Could be that, but
it's just
it doesn't work. And I mean, to be fair, it kind of then probably helps a little bit then that this is sort of him not being the best boyfriend, and then that's why he sort of goes over the top with the Centurion thing in the next story. So maybe that that it helps elevate that a little bit, but still I I cringe every time I watch it. I cringe at all of their scenes when they're talking to each other and being a bit too close and stuff, and it just doesn't work. Maybe it would if they were better characters, or Jenny was a better character.
I'm just like, how old is Jennifer supposed to be? Because she acts like a 9-year-old kid who's like lost her parent in the supermarket and we're always trying to help her find her parents.
Well, in theory, if she's a doppelganger, she's only about 3 hours old. So
that's true, to be fair. Because that was also what surprised me. I think human Jennifer, I actually thought was, she's quite sweet. So it is the ganger Jennifer that I'm like, oh, shut the fuck up.
And again, that goes against the point of the episode. Yeah.
So I'm like, I hate this ganger version of her because she's annoying and clingy.
Yeah.
So why am I rooting for her?
Yeah.
I guess to be fair, they do make her like the bad guy.
And they do make a sort of they do, I think, turn it so that she was like manipulating Rory all along and that kind of thing. But that doesn't mean Rory should fall for it. He's been doing this for a long time now.
No, it makes him look a lot stupider than he is.
Yeah, we've had so much of him being good and being, this his own character, and this one just sort of puts him back in like the naive first adventure companion mode, which I'm not a fan of, and which Amy did. I can't remember which episode it was for Amy, but there was a similar one for her where it was like, you've been on these adventures before, you know how this goes, why are you acting like this? But maybe that's just an aspect of they've had these characters for about a year and a half and they're like, well, we need to have the cliche, I've fallen for this, and maybe this is how they're doing it. I don't know.
Especially when it's a 2-part and you have to fill the time, I guess.
Yes, exactly. But yes, that's not my best. Have you got anything else to say then, if it's your third negative?
No, I think you covered it all and I just interjected. But yeah, that was my third one.
Yeah, what a mare.
Unnecessary.
My third and final one is the terrible CGI.
That's my second one.
Yeah. I thought it would be better than it was. I watched it and I went, this is worse. This is worse.
It's worse.
First of all, the arm comes out and I thought you just saw a thing, and then you see the arm go back in. I'm like, that's bad. And then the head comes out, and it reminds me of those. It's like those, those like old 3D, 4D films you'd go and see in a theme park, where it was like just when 3D was becoming a thing in like the early 2000s, and it would be a gimmick. And it'd be like, be careful, I might get you, and it comes out of there. That's what it reminds me of, the head coming out, and I'm like, I just hate it.
It's something from a Tim Burton stop motion animation. Like this is like a Coraline-esque Neil Gaiman kind of deal. Neil Gaiman, the last one, Doctor Who.
But it's not done well.
It looks terrible, and it's so against everything else she does in the episode.
Because they're supposed to take the form of the human. Why is she turning into the Lazarus experiment? It doesn't make sense.
Especially when Rory's supposed to be on her side. Like, that whole scene, you just don't need it there.
No.
It's so bizarre. Like, she's like, oh, I'm me. And like 40 seconds ago, you would go, and like, shut up.
Yeah, there's that. And then there's, I guess it's the CGI eyes, when she's like, oh, evil Jennifer's here, when her eyes like glow.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not necessarily needed. And then
I also thought the shot right as it cuts to titles with Buzzer's face like melting into the asset, I was like, oh.
Yeah. I like that idea. I think that's a creepy idea, but again, and also there's one moment where I think Jennifer, it's like almost like a jump scare where it's her normal face, and then just the flesh face goes, ooh, and then it goes again. I'm like, don't do that again, please.
Yeah, I think she's like looking in the mirror or something, wasn't she? I think that's just before she spits out the.
It is,
lump
and I'm like, you don't need that, please. There's no need, and because it's not even like, it's obviously not transformed. It's just like that face just plastered on her other one and then taken off again. And I'm like,
so that's the trouble, because practically, I think that would look really good. Like that shot when the storm's happening and you like, it's the gangers like the normal faces and then their ganger faces. That looks great, and again, great direction. But I they just don't have the time to film one shot of her with that makeup on, and then okay, take it off again. It's just a waste of time and money, isn't it? But not great.
But yes, that's the CGI. Mainly, it's the elasticated Jennifer that I've got written down.
That's the biggest offender. That was when I like wrote it down for sure. Like, this is a negative for sure. So bizarre.
We'll see how it goes for next week. I don't think there's. I can't remember if there's any bad CGI next week. I mean, there probably is.
She transforms into a whole ass CGI creature. So.
Oh no!
I don't think it's going to be pleasant.
No.
I guess this is like a prelude to that, but I'm like, no, please.
Yeah, maybe. But have you got anything else to say about the bad CGI?
No, it's terrible.
Fair
But
enough.
you know, it is what it is.
So there's a couple of my additional negatives. There's some bad ADR again in this episode.
Yes, I did notice one aspect. I can't remember when it was. I think it was when Cleese was talking. I'm like, you're not
There was one. I think there was one as well when Amy, Rory, and the guy with the kid like run into the one of the hallways, and he's like, "Oh, we're going to need the acid suits," and then the doctor replies, but none of it is said like with their faces on there, and it's so badly like cut in the top. I'm like, okay, it just sets up the fact that the gangers are going to steal the acid suits, I think, and that you know, whatever that is. So I don't think that line was necessarily needed. And also, you know, the whole concept of the gangers versus the humans, it feels forced because there's no, at this point when they first meet, there's no like, we're gonna steal your lives, we're gonna they just want to live and do their own thing.
Yeah.
It kind of gets there when they're like, oh, I'm gonna go home for my son's birthday, and there's that kind of little bit of conflict there. It's like, oh, but it's my son, you know, there's
that makes sense for that.
But there's not enough of that. No. There isn't enough of that. It's just more like oh, you're different to me. You're the machine.
It's just Cleves being ganger racist, isn't it?
Yeah. And again, there's there are so many metaphors in this that you could be like, oh, this is a metaphor for racism, but they don't go deep enough into that in this episode at least, and that's why there's no precedent for gangers. Like they mention like, oh, there was this incident somewhere else, but there's no like a ganger uprising ongoing somewhere else, and so many people have been replaced. And there's no need for the ganger fear, so to speak. And I think there needs to be something else that maybe did that. There need to be more conflict other than just you're different than me and I'm gonna get you. Which didn't work, especially if this is supposed to be the far future where space travel and aliens and all this kind of thing. There'd be more. You would hope there would be more acceptance for things that aren't normal humans.
Yeah,
but it does make sense for me in that, but never mind. What are your additional negatives, if any?
I don't actually have any, to be fair, but that's just because I'm not particularly passionate either way about this episode. So I just, I found it very easy to like, those are my three positives, those are my three negatives. I'm just like, I'm kind of, don't feel strongly either way. It's one of those ones, really.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And like I said at the start, I do think you could have fun with this if you were drinking, and you could do a drinking game to this. You could do one every time the gangers change face. You could be like, you could do a shot.
I didn't have a terrible time. I wasn't pulling my hair up, being like, just end, because it did go quite quickly.
It wasn't a boring episode. I think it's safe to say. I think you're watching it.
Good.
No, but you're watching it to be like, this is terrible. This is so bad. What on earth is going on? I can't believe they've done this. That's terrible.
People like going through the show, I'd be like, you can watch this one once because it's Doctor Who. You should watch all the episodes, and then don't feel the need to revisit it if you don't want.
It's like watching Cats, the musical, the film. It's so bad, but you can't take your eyes off it.
To the point where I've watched it multiple times at your house for some reason.
Yeah, again with drinking games because it makes sense.
Jellicle.
Oh, God, yeah, imagine that. God, imagine if you drink game for this one, but every time they say ganger,
my God. And finish your drink when Jennifer says ganga. One time she says ganga, not ganger.
God's sake. Anyway, we're gonna end this soon. Fun facts. What have you got for part one of?
For part one,
two-parter.
Part uno. Not too many, but you'll be pleased to know. Actually, no, that's not true.
Even the behind the scenes wasn't that interesting.
Even the behind the scenes wasn't that fun. But anyway. Matthew Graham, the writer, had previously written Fear Her in Series 2 and co-created Life on Mars and its sequel series Ashes to Ashes. Marshall Lancaster, who plays Buzzer in this story, starred in both shows.
I IMDb'd him when I was watching it. I was like, what's he been in? I was like, there it is. Life
you!
So I think I watched, was it earlier this year I watched Life on Mars? I've watched it fairly recently for the first time. So
oh, really? I hadn't seen it before.
It was in my head. No, because it came out when I think we were too young to watch Life on Mars, so I never watched it.
Yeah.
Like I said,
I didn't watch it live.
The only thing I got away with was Torchwood, and that was because I was like, oh, it's Doctor Who, and then even that was very much pushing the boundaries.
I remember when Series 3 pictures first started coming out, and I'm like, oh, it's him from Life on Mars. Little did I know it was going to be the Master. Well, I mean, I didn't even know who the Master was at that point, but exciting. But yeah, it's all connected. Everyone is in everything on British TV.
Everyone in BBC knows everyone else in BBC.
Pretty much, yes. With the conclusion of this episode, the entire active TARDIS crew has had a duplicate of themselves made, though Amy's is still yet to be revealed until the next episode. So I think that's quite funny. Because obviously Rory had his Auton duplicate.
I mean, they technically they already did when in Amy's Choice, because they were all duplicates there. So
in a way, I suppose, if you want to be finicky.
I get what you mean, like physical duplicates.
I guess. But yeah.
Take that trivia.
Take that fun facts. Delete that one. The Doctor's investigation of an acid pipe is reminiscent of the Fifth Doctor investigating tire treads in the case of Androzani. It's kind of like put together in a very similar way and like directed in a similar way. So I think that's quite a nice little. I just think it's neat reference. Again, great direction. Good old Julian. Stephen Moffat suggested that the gangers should work in a factory. Wanting to differentiate that setting from other factory set stories in Doctor Who history, Matthew Graham suggested the monastery setting instead, which Moffat really liked.
We instead went for another location that's used often in Doctor Who, a castle.
Basically, yeah. Because they can't stray too far from Cardiff.
No.
Moffat suggested the idea of the Doctor purposefully investigating the flesh rather than just happening upon the monastery by chance, so that was added into the script, which I think was probably
that's one of the better editions of the script for sure.
Yes. There aren't many, but that is one of the better ones. Matthew Graham wanted the gangers to be scary, but not necessarily monsters, hoping they could be relatable and seen by the audience as having their own rights.
Mm-hmm. You get there until you get the elasticated head, but
it works until it doesn't.
Yeah,
but yeah, I appreciate what he was trying to do. Mm-hmm. Originally, there were supposed to be more workers in the crew and therefore more gangers, but characters were cut for budget reasons and also to evoke a better feeling of claustrophobia throughout the story. There were also originally multiple gangers of each person, but these were also removed to make the story less confusing. Can you imagine trying to keep up with all of that?
There's like 10 Jennies going around. Like, oh my god, who's who, please?
You imagine that's a lot of gangers for Rory to make out with. It was extremely cold during the filming of the story, causing concern about the main trio's welfare as their costumes weren't designed for the weather conditions. But I guess they powered through because they didn't die. So
I'm glad you like costumes for weather conditions, because I was like, oh, screw the rest of the crew. But their main trio, they're the big ones. Just make sure they're okay.
And it's because like their suits are actually quite, I guess, they held in the warmth better. I don't know. Because they're like one-piece suits, weren't they? What they wore. So.
Oh, were they?
Guess, yeah. Raquel Cassidy, who plays Cleves, was cast 3 days before filming as the original actress dropped out at the last minute. Cassidy had previously worked with Matt Smith in Party Animals 4 years earlier. I haven't seen the show, but there you go. Everyone knows everyone in the BBC.
Literally.
The arrival of the TARDIS at the monastery was originally a much bigger sequence where the Doctor revealed that there was a little hatch to fall out of at the bottom of the TARDIS box, which would have been hilarious, but there you go. People would have lost their minds over it, like when Jodie Whittaker was working at the bottom of the console in Spyfall. So I guess it's probably for the best that they didn't do that.
Forgetting the fact that Matt Smith is holding onto the bottom of the TARDIS via 2 holes.
Yeah, but that's absolutely fine. But heaven forbid, heaven forbid
a woman does anything. God.
Oh, heaven forbid. God, what on earth? Rest in peace, Doctor Who. Sarah Smart, who plays Jennifer, wasn't told which of the 2 Jennifers she was playing in the scenes where it was purposely vague to kind of, I guess, inform her performance, which I suppose makes sense. But yeah, still. Stephen Moffat came up with the design of the gangers, describing them to the production team as eyeball matter, white with small capillaries running through them.
So, thank you.
That's a lovely phrase, eyeball matter. Remember that when you go to bed tonight, eyeball matter. But yeah, I love the designs. I think that's a neat kind of visual for them. A chief computer character was originally in the dining room, which talked to the characters in a Yorkshire accent, which would have been quite funny, but maybe so bad it's good kind of deal. And maybe we also needed more of that in this one. It could have been a good thing. It could have flopped entirely. So sure, why not? And finally, for scenes where characters and their gangers were in the same shot, doubles were used with the backs of their heads made to look like the actors. Scenes were then shot over the doubles' shoulders. So
standard practice, I think, that one for those types of things.
So there you go. Some fun facts.
Some interesting facts there, yes, agreed. I did also want to add that I think the acid suits are terrible. I think they look terrible.
The acid suits?
Yeah, the suits they wear, the like big
bronze.
The big bronze, terrible things.
There they are. We're not going to move any faster. There they are.
The things don't even come down. There's a big gap where the visor's supposed to come down.
Yeah.
A bit tacky, I think. Also, yes, the way it's like, oh, they've shut the door. Oh, what are we gonna do?
I love
think
Rory.
this
Like, just disappears.
Oh,
Rory, you idiot.
God's sake, Rory, you fool. That leaves one thing left to do. Out of 10, what are you going to give the episode?
What are you going to give the episode?
I think I'm going to give it a 5.
Okay, I'd written down 4.5 or 5.
Oh, fair.
But I think I do think it's significantly better than The Long Game and Other Monsters, which I gave a 4, I think.
I think you can have more fun with this. Again, as we discussed,
Yeah.
you can have fun with this episode.
I gave Fear Her a 5, I think, or 5.5.
And you can, and again, Fear Her has the memeability factor.
It does
come out of it beforehand.
Yeah, I think I'm going to agree with you and go 5. That was my instinct, but then the more I thought about it, I was like, do I? But yeah, I think it is still like I would put it maybe a tier above like my 4s that I've given in the past. So.
Yes, yeah, I think so.
And it might be elevated by part 2 for all we know. So.
Or it might be made worse.
Or I might go down to 4.5 after I watch part 2.
Yeah. But yes, part 2 will be next week. It's The Almost People, isn't it? That's the title.
It is. Another great title.
Yes.
He gets a name drop in this episode, bizarrely.
Oh, I don't remember much about this episode, as I didn't for this one.
Yeah.
I just struggle to see how they're going to make another 45 minutes out of it. It very much feels like it could be just it's just like I'm worried it's going to be dragged out for longer than
everyone remembers the ending and nothing else.
Yeah, well, that's it. Is I know there's a good like 5 minutes of of the Doctor melting Amy, but
yeah,
other than that, I don't know what else they're gonna, how much. And
I
remember that they get dropped off at the headquarters of the planet. That's all I really remember after that. But
yeah, there's a big gang of monster creature by the end. I'm pretty sure like eyeballs on the walls, like watching them at some point.
Yes, yeah,
I remember that.
I think
I think I really like the opening scene with the gang of Doctor because I think he like does impressions of previous Doctors from what I remember.
Yeah, so, I think I want to say that they just lift Tom Baker's voice at one point and just put it in there with the jelly baby.
Would you like a jelly baby?
And just put that in.
So yeah, there's bits and pieces with that I remember.
That's it. We remember the beginning and the end.
We remember the good bits. But yeah, and obviously they easily resolve the conflict with like this boy now has 2 fathers because they kill one of them.
Yeah, exactly. Conveniently, at least one of every ganger dies, so you
how about
don't
that?
have to worry about it.
Interesting. Yeah, and also, I think Ganger Jennifer eats Buzzer. I think there's like a big bit where her mouth goes, and it's awful. So look forward to that next week, folks.
I'm not ready for that. Oh God.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see how I feel about it compared to this one. So I don't like this one. I don't hate it either.
Yeah. So hopefully it's still got.
Maybe the next one will be even more memeable with the bad Ganger.
Yes, that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that it's going to be a fun time, not necessarily a good time, but a fun time. That's all I'll take. Yeah. So yeah, that'll come next week. Also, there's been some more Doctor Who news that's come out this week. Because I think in the new Doctor Who magazine, which came out today as of recording, I think Russell's spoken about more plans for his future and all that kind of jazz. And there's been some certain leaks online, which some people may have seen. So we will hopefully be back at some point in the near future before the next Shouting Savoy to talk about that. Because there's so much going on. I thought it'd be pretty quiet between now and for the next few months, but it seems like everything's coming out. So yeah, basically, which is that's going to happen when they're filming. But when
they're filming a few months ahead, that's going to happen. Isn't it?
Yes, although I've seen that I think a couple of people have been getting takedown orders from the BBC if they posted footage and stuff of what's been leaked. So
that's not surprising.
Yeah, it does not surprise me.
Someone's been fired.
At least that also proves that it is real and it's true.
It's legit. And everyone's already saved it to their phones.
Yeah, actually. We'll come back and discuss that at another time. But that will be it for today. Goodbye.
Bye.